The CNBC app. Global market news in one place. Customizable sections and personalized alerts. Stocks tracking, interactive charts and market insights all in your hands. Stay connected. Stay informed. Download the CNBC app today.
A very warm welcome to Squawk Box with Karen Cho and myself, Steve Sedgwick, and these are your headlines on a stunningly busy day. Apple shares rise 3% in extended trade, boosted by strong service revenue. But iPhone sales miss forecasts, with the tech giant's China business taking a hit.
We're going to make...
President Trump pledges to slap tariffs of 25% on Canadian and Mexican imports from Saturday, but weighs up whether to exclude oil from the measures.
We're going to make that determination probably tonight on oil. Yeah, because they send us oil, we'll see. It depends on what the price is. If the oil is properly priced, if they treat us properly.
He cuts rates by 25 basis points. Its fifth cut of the cycle amid mounting concerns over sluggish growth. President Christine Lagarde shuts down suggestions that a bigger move was debated.
I can reassure you right away, we did not even utter the two numbers 50. So 50 was not in the debate at all.
And more company news today. Novartis's fourth quarter results are just crossing the wires, with analysts expecting revenues of almost $13 billion. We'll be speaking to the CEO, Vas Narasimhan. That's at 7:30 GMT.
And two black boxes are recovered from an American Airlines jet that collided with a military helicopter in Washington D.C. in what is the deadliest U.S. aviation crash in almost 24 years. Karen, huge corporate news, in fact huge on every front, whether it's politics, economics or corporate. So we'll just go straight into the latest corporate news. Novartis shares up 5.75% year to date. They've come off their recent lows, but they've still got a long way to go to get to their one-year highs. Novartis continues strong momentum of sales growth with margin expansion. They say they are reaching key innovation milestones in 2024. Net sales grew 12%, with core operating income up 22%. I'll just give you one more flash. The free cash flow, $16.3 billion US dollars. That is up 24% in US dollar terms, driven by higher net cash flows from operating activities in the fourth quarter. It is my delight that Carolyn joins us now to discuss more. Carolyn, nice to see you.
Nice to see you, Steve and Karen. Good morning to you. And I'm really just looking through these numbers, and looks to be a beat on the top and the bottom line. $12.72 billion US dollars. That was what was expected in the fourth quarter. What the company here in Basel delivered in terms of net sales for the fourth quarter was 13.153. So that looks like a clear beat. And when it comes to the EPS number, what we are seeing here in terms of US dollar, 1.98. The expectation was for 1.78. I can go through a couple more numbers, but really the story here seems to be reconfirmed at Novartis. They have, according to Barclays, been able to beat expectations 3 times last year. And on top of that, they've been able to raise their guidance on the back of that. And they seem to have done it once again, Steve and Karen. So they've really been spoiling investors of the past year on the back of strong performance from some of its key drugs, Entresto, Kesimpta, Kisqali, Cosentyx. But the key outlook for this year is going to be, are they going to be able to raise their guidance once again for 2025? And they seem to have done that. Net sales expected to grow mid to high single digits, and core operating income expected to grow high single to low double digit. This is a really strong outlook from Novartis this morning. But the key question, once again, is the pipeline, but also the loss of exclusivity for Entresto. This is the company's blockbuster heart drug. 50% of the sales come from the U.S., and that is where the big problem lies, because that's where they're facing loss of exclusivity starting this year. In Europe, that won't be the case until 2026. In Japan, that will not be the case until 2030. So how does Novartis offset that? That's going to be one of the key questions that we'll be putting to the CEO in 1.5 hours' time. Again, the pipeline is going to be in key focus. Some analysts point out that the catalyst here will be towards the second half of this year. That's why some of the analyst community argue, hey, right now we're not too inspired by what the shares could be doing, so look towards the second half this year. And of course, we want to talk to the CEO about Trump, what Trump 2.0 means for the company. And guys, you had a fantastic discussion with the CEO about Trump, about a maybe more permissive FTC in Davos last week. And we'll talk much more about that.
Yes, you've hit every bullet I could possibly imagine. I'm really looking forward to that interview. Thank you, Caro, and we'll see you a little bit later on. Don't miss that interview with Caroline and Vaz Narasimhan. That is the first on CNBC Conversation. We will do that in 1 hour and 25 minutes' time, exactly to the minute.
In the meantime, let's get to tech, because it was a big focus on Apple yesterday, as the stock has now moved higher in extended trade after sales came in above Wall Street estimates at $124.3 billion for the fiscal first quarter. It was also a beat on the bottom line, with earnings per share of $2.40. However, iPhone sales were slightly lower on the year and missed estimates, with the company's inability to roll out its new AI-powered device to all markets posing a headwind. Nonetheless, the CEO Tim Cook told analysts on the call that iPhone 16 sales outperformed in markets where AI features are available, and the company gave a positive growth forecast. Apple has outperformed its peers in a bumpy week for US tech after DeepSeek's AI model release put firms' mammoth AI capex under scrutiny. The world's largest company devotes only a fraction of what its peers do to capex. That figure came in at less than a fifth of what Microsoft spent in the latest quarter. Arjun joins us with more. Arjun, this was the problem for me for Apple. Going into the earnings, you could say there was slightly less pressure on it than on some of the other companies, but really not, because after DeepSeek, Apple became the stock that everybody was racing back into. So the slightly higher valuation, just as the numbers are rolling across the tape, I think were fascinating. For me, what we saw, the guidance helped, the Mac and the iPad sales helped, but China and AI execution was not fantastic for the company.
No, look, it was a mixed bag, but I think ultimately the quarter, I think for me, encapsulate why investors love Apple so much. And I think, you had iPhone sales slipping 1%, its core iPhone product, but overall revenue was up 4% because of some of those other products. And importantly, its gross margin, the highest on record, nearly 47%. And a lot of that is to do with its services business. And the services business we've spoken about for years, that even if we see a slowdown in iPhone sales, that massive install base of iPhone users is what's going to keep Apple growing. And you saw that again. The services business came in at about $26.34 billion. That is bigger than Microsoft's intelligent cloud segment as a unit. So it's a fascinating business, and the story that we've heard for many years at Apple is the hardware plus the services, the SaaS model. You are seeing that play out in a period now where iPhone sales are under pressure, and in particular in China.
Arjun, a great scene setter. Let's just broaden out that conversation. We've got Francisco Geronimo with us, Vice President EMEA Devices IDC. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm just going to call this the DeepSeek week, because the Chinese technology has really upset the valuations, some of the hopes that the United States would have some preeminence in technology. I think the Chinese have just pushed back against what we've been seeing quarter after quarter from the United States. How does Apple fit into that context?
Well, DeepSeek can be quite an interesting use for Apple. At the end of the day, we are talking about AI models that require a lot of spending to, and a lot of capex, as we have seen from different companies, to run. And if Apple can offer AI features on their smartphones, Mac, iPads at a much lower cost, this will definitely help. Because at the moment they have a partnership with OpenAI. They are offering ChatGPT on the iPhone and their products, but this comes at a cost. If they are able to embed what DeepSeek developed into their offering, this will have a massive positive impact on Apple.
Through the Western lens, but let's just take the China mainland market, because already what we've seen, competition from the likes of Huawei, Xiaomi, Vivo, Honor, Oppo, all just taking some of the shine off those Greater China sales, 18.51 billion versus 20.82 billion same time a year ago. If these Chinese operators lean into the DeepSeek technology, also at a lower cost, and bring it much quicker given the security challenges, doesn't that mean the market share that Apple has in China will slip, at least short to medium term?
Apple market share in China is still very strong. but could be higher if they were able to offer Apple Intelligence. And for that, they will have to do partnerships with the local players to be able to offer those services. DeepSeek could be an opportunity as well by embedding what DeepSeek is offering in China rather than waiting for those agreements to come into place. So we still see Apple quite strong despite the decline, despite the drop in units sold last quarter. But China is a critical market, and Apple really needs to find a way through, because we saw from all Chinese vendors that AI is really driving demand with double-digit growth in China. So Apple needs to find a way, and DeepSeek could be an opportunity for that.
Francisco, Tim Cook said Apple sales were stronger in markets where Apple Intelligence was available. But how much is that a product of the features of Apple Intelligence versus the fact there's a lot of people still on perhaps 4 or 5-year-old iPhones?
Well, that's true. But at the end of the day, why would the sales of the iPhone 16 be stronger in those markets where Apple Intelligence is available? At the end of the day, yes, people replace their phones, the hardware plays a major role, but everyone is so aware of the benefits of AI that at the end of the day, if they need to upgrade their phones, why should they buy a phone without those features rather than get the next iPhone with the latest features that will continue to evolve over time? So there's a lot of interest. IDC forecasts that the AI-enabled smartphones will grow 83% this year. By 2028, over 70% of the smartphones available and sold will be AI-enabled. The same with PCs. So consumers are really aware. They may not necessarily know everything they can do and all the benefits of AI, but they don't want to miss the boat. And that's why they are jumping into the AI smartphones. And that's where the iPhone 16 series did better than the 15, particularly in the markets where the Apple Intelligence was available. What is really interesting is how important Apple Intelligence is becoming to Apple, because if they don't roll out Apple Intelligence in more countries, particularly in Europe, they will miss that opportunity where the Chinese vendors are really pushing forward to, especially in the premium segment.
And I spoke about services at the top there, a very important business. Where does Apple Intelligence fit into this? Do you think Apple's going to be able to monetize this in any kind of subscription sort of service, and is that something that should be factored into the investment case?
That's one of the big question marks most manufacturers are asking themselves. How can they monetize? Because at the end of the day, Apple has a huge cost by offering the features. That's not any indication they will charge for now. The same with the Android players, where they are basically paying royalties to Google to use Gemini on their smartphones. But no one was really yet able to monetize those kind of features. Will they just be a driver to sell hardware, or is there an opportunity to sell services? I believe there's an opportunity to sell services, but that's yet to be seen.
Francisco, nice to see you, and great conversation from all of you so far. I just want to ask something really, really basic. Can consumers still afford these amazing phones? They're not about phones, are they? They're computers. The iPhone 16 Pro Max is $1,199 in the United States, or I'm told $49.95 on a 24-month plan. What about the price? What about the consumer appetite? What about the consumer sensitivity to price?
The average selling price of smartphones in the last 8 years came up nearly 50%.
50%
across.
In how many years? 5 years?
In the last 8 years.
Wow.
So consumers are really keen to pay more for a device that is really critical in our lives. We all know that we can't live without smartphones. And even in markets like India, Apple is doing extremely well. They enter the top 5 smartphone ranking for the first time with over 10% market share. And we are talking about a market where the average selling price is really, really low.
Yes.
But it doesn't mean we are paying the full price tag of a smartphone, because either we are buying, or consumers are buying their smartphones on monthly installment plans financing plans, very popular in India nowadays. On the other hand, we are trading in our previous devices. So the price tag of a new smartphone, it's not what we see because we are handing over the
what you
phone.
are, I think, very clearly saying to me is that despite concerns about the consumer in vast parts of the world, from the West and the US, and the GDP figures overnight were underwhelming, in Europe and in Asia especially, the sensitivity to price from the consumer is diminished because people see this as a must-have rather than a luxury.
It's definitely not a luxury anymore. It's part of our lives, and consumers are willing to pay more and keep their devices for longer. That's the other thing that we are seeing. It's not just about how much we pay today and how much we're going to pay in the next 2-3 years. We are keeping our phones for 4 or 5 years, and therefore the return on investment, let's say, for consumers is spread through a longer period of time.
To the point around consumers parting with their cash, let's talk about the size of the iPhone, because there's something coming. It's getting skinny. It's getting thin. This makeover we've been watching for the iPhone to change for a number of years, and there's lots of talk that the iPhone 17 will be an iPhone 17 Air, so much thinner than we're used to, and that Samsung may be dragged into this space of going thinner as well. So how do you think about that? Is that going to be a trigger for consumers again?
There's different form factors that will eventually drive consumer demand. A thinner iPhone, it's something that will catch the eye of many consumers. Last week, Samsung announced the Galaxy S25 Edge, a thinner smartphone as well. We are seeing as well foldables trying to really bring different offering to consumers. Even Huawei with the trifold they announced or they launched last year. So there's interest from consumers on different hardware, and a thinner phone will potentially drive some sales.
You've got to love a foldable. You've got to love a foldable, don't you?
Oh, hang on, though. Hang on. Let's be really honest about it. Do you have a foldable?
I want one, but Apple doesn't.
You don't have one. Do you have a foldable?
No.
And yet you're not. You're an Android fan, aren't you? Do you have a foldable?
I do.
You've got about 20 phones. You don't count. But I mean, it's
if
kind
Apple had a choice of one, I think I would buy one.
kind of like I hear you. It's quite nice, but is it become a must-have?
Will drive a lot of attention if Apple jumps into that form factor. There are rumors, the same way as there are rumors about a thinner, an iPhone Air. There are also rumors that Apple is working on a foldable, and that's a very different form factor. Foldables in general haven't been that attractive because they are not thin enough from a form factor perspective, and also price points are still quite high. But we have seen Huawei and other vendors in China doing very well with foldables, because if we look into the latest Honor Magic V3, the size of the phone is similar to any other traditional smartphone. And when we start seeing that kind of devices and hardware with high-end specs, clearly that's an interesting device. I've been using a few foldables, and I love the fact that I can have a bigger screen.
But sorry, I know you guys can come in for a sensible question in a minute, but how many phones do you have?
Well,
as many as you want. That's the point. It's like
I try many different phones almost on a weekly basis.
It's like asking the CEO of Volkswagen, how many cars do you have? Well, because he could drive a Bugatti, a Porsche, a Seat, if he's that way inclined. Sorry, you can ask a proper question.
No. Francisco, you mentioned India earlier as well. Do you think, given Apple's troubles in China, when does India become a bigger market than China for Apple, if ever?
Apple is growing high double digit in India. So they see the market as a strategic opportunity. And even Tim Cook last night mentioned India as one of the markets where they are opening stores and really taking that on board. So we will continue to see the iPhone sales growing in India. They enter the top 5. We expect them to continue growing, because it's not just about the price of the iPhone. It's also about how they can support financing programs, discounts. Apple has been very aggressive, which wasn't in the past, in terms of discounts, in terms of promotions, and that will help. But India is not about the latest iPhone 16 series with Apple Intelligence. It's about the older, previous generation models at a much lower price point.
Because they also need the infrastructure, and that's next week's conversation. We can't wait. Go on, 10 seconds on infrastructure.
It's not about infrastructure. It's about the fact they need to continue expanding the installed base, which is one of the, if not the most valuable asset today for Apple.
Love chatting to you. Thank you. Should we do a whole show on Apple one day, or Francisco and his phone collection? How many phones have you got at the moment?
Oh,
come on, big reveal.
Francisco,
thousands and thousands.
Something new.
Thousands and
thousands.
How many phones do you use on a regular basis? We're not letting you go
three or four. I
carry. Know which one's ringing? So one starts ringing, you're just sort of reaching for all of them.
I have one main or a couple of main phones, an iPhone and Android devices, but I need to try different form factors, different vendor and what they are offering in their phones, so that's why.
Francisco Geronimo, a man of many phones, Vice President of EMEA Devices at IDC. Lovely to see you, sir.
Thank you.
Engaging and perfect, and a lot of information. Thanks you, Arj.
Thank you.
I want to see Arjun at our next MWC opening, the jacket pocket. There's like a whole heap of phones just stacked up, ready to use, so you can try different form factors. Coming up on the show, Donald Trump says he will follow through on his tariff threats against Canada and Mexico. We'll discuss the impact on markets and consumers. Plus, investors' flight to safety sees large flows of gold transfer stateside, leading to a bullion shortage in London. And pharma giant Novartis delivers a net sales beat for the fourth quarter. Carolyn will be speaking to the CEO of Vas Narasimhan at 7:30 GMT. That is a first on CNBC. Let's take a look at US markets as we look to round out the trading week, but of course the trading month as well. And what we're seeing on the Dow, bounce, modest increase, but outpaced by the S&P 500, the Nasdaq in the green as well, modest upside. It's been a bumpy old trading week and a lot of rotation under the hood, but of course a ton of earnings. So just recapping for you, it was the DeepSeek story at the start of the week. This Chinese tech done on the cheap and very quickly that's really tested some of those big stocks that have been right at the forefront of the momentum trade. Apple has been a stock that investors have liked for the safety trade. And of course, we've had earnings out overnight. So what we're seeing, a lot of moving pieces here. If you look at top moving stocks on the trade yesterday, it was IBM to the upside, Alphabet as well, but to the downside in earnings reaction, it was Microsoft. And to my point around one of the big momentum names around the AI trade, losing steam on the earnings. And of course, we heard a day earlier that Azure, the cloud business, was a little bit slower than expected. And this has been one area where AI has been moving the needle on the cloud business. So that disappointment setting in. So there's been, again, a ton of different moving pieces in technology world. Today, as we get set up for trade, we're also looking to the tariffs and the threat of 25% tariffs on Mexico and Canada from Trump. Let me take you to treasuries and the impact we're seeing here as a result. The 2-year, we're 4.23, the 10-year, 4.54. You may recall just a few weeks ago, we were talking about whether tariffs could have an impact on inflation. Bond markets had reacted, yields have moved higher, but there have been other stories that investors have doubled down on recently. So are we back when it comes to the tariffs? How do markets react to the news flow? Let's take a look at the dollar. And what we're seeing, dollar trades, euro slightly softer. We're 103.88 this morning. Sterling trades are 124.22, so slight uptick there. Dollar firmer versus the Japanese yen, but yen has been on the ascent. We're seeing dollar firmer versus the Swissy too. Now, WTI, Brent, gold, quick look at those trades this morning. Oil is firmer. We've got 0.8 up on WTI, so we're through the 73 handle. We're 73.32. Firmer on Brent, and gold prices we're closely watching. We'll get into this in just a bit, but there's been a lot of distortions in the market between what we're seeing on some of the global exchanges versus the United States, and you can see 27.93 steady price for bullion today. To the Asian markets, the impact has been on the Lunar New Year holiday with liquidity impacted across the region, but we do have the South Korean market trading today. That is down 0.8 plus, but elsewhere we're bookended by green on the Japanese stock market across to India and Australia today. Now, the Stocks Europe 600, what an interesting trade we've seen just as the market was settling into a narrative that Europe was in the slow lane, US exceptionalism reigned, and therefore The market was overweight on US assets. Suddenly, European markets caught a bid. We're up more than 6% for the trading month. Fresh records inked yesterday. And some of the individual markets, I mean, the DAX has actually outpaced the Stoxx 600 this month. It's been up more than 9% for the trading month. So there's certainly been some peaks that we've been chasing. And don't forget, in the context where the ECB cut interest rates yesterday, Steve.
Super, yes, ECB has cut interest rates by 25 basis points, taking the deposit rate down to 2.75%. That is the lowest level since early 2023. ECB President Christine Lagarde said that economic risks remain tilted to the downside and that the economy will stay weak in the near term. Speaking at the press conference in response to a question from CNBC's Annetta, Lagarde said the size of the cut was never in question.
I can reassure you right away, we did not even utter the two numbers 50. So 50 was not in the debate at all. And as I said, there was rallied support at unanimously by all members of the Governing Council for 25 basis points.
Thank you for listening to Squawk Box Europe Express.
For more market-moving news, you can head to cnbc.com.
Or join us again on the show with Steve Sedgwick, Karen Cho, and myself, Arabi Lekumete, weekdays on CNBC.